safely. At the Lakentini Hospital, for instance, we also permit stable babies in the incubator to have a direct link with their parents through touches.
Favoriser la croissance du bébé comme s'il était encore dans le ventre.
At the Douala Lakentini Hospital, this has been integrated, and at the same time, disturbed parents are accorded a follow-up.
And out of Cameroon, French President Emmanuel Macron calls on the world to work towards ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. He was speaking at the opening conference of the humanitarian crisis in the Palestinian territory. Cedric Chakutio reports.
The Israel army is strengthening its hold on northern Gaza as thousands of Palestinians are flying south in the hope of finding shelter after more than a month of bombings. On Wednesday, nearly 50,000 residents left Gaza City, according to the Israel army, bringing to 72,000 the number of people who have left since that date. In addition, President Emmanuel Macron opened a humanitarian conference to try to release aid to Gaza, constantly bombarded by Israel since the Hamas attack on October 7th, without much hope of progress in the absence of the Israeli government in Paris and senior leaders of Arab countries. French President said, "It is the protection of us and we must work for a ceasefire." These declarations were done before the representatives of around 50 countries and humanitarian organizations. During the conference, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu once again rejected any ceasefire in the Gaza Strip without the release of hostages held by the Hamas. For now, France and other countries present are looking for a way to end the conflict between Israel and Hamas.
That's it for the first part of the news. Talking Point is up next. Tonight on Talking Point, I'll be receiving a human rights defender, and he's known as Bernie Kajetan. He's based in Boya, and we'll be discussing on the recent happening that occurred in Ekbeko village. Good evening, Mr. Bernier. It is a pleasure having you on Talking Point tonight. What memories and feelings does the name Ekbeko conjure for a human rights activist that you are?
Thank you very much for that question. The memories and the mentioning of the name Ekbeko in Mamfe, the southwest region of Cameroon, is going to continue to be pathetic to me as a human rights activist. Why? This is because we are currently carrying out an investigation to ascertain what actually happened, who perpetrated that heinous and barbaric act against humans, against humanity. Why were they doing that? That they attack in a single day or against unarmed civilians led to the killing of more than 30 people, including women and children. This was so pathetic, and as a result, we are speaking to survivors of this barbaric incident. We are speaking to eyewitnesses. We are speaking to community leaders, and the testimonies are horrible. The testimonies are pathetic. And so as a human rights activist, the mentioning and the memories of this name is going to remain pathetic within me, just like the case that happened in Gabu. When I hear about Gabu, it brings back that sad memories. When I hear about Pinyin in the early days of this crisis, it brings about that sadness, that feeling, that pathetic feelings.
And the focus of your work in that area, which includes Ekbeko village.
As a human rights organization, the Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Africa has been involved in human rights monitoring, documentation and reporting in Cameroon in general, and particularly in the northwest and southwest regions of the country, wherein the armed conflict has been ongoing since 2016. And I can tell you that we have also been able to train community leaders, including traditional authorities, religious authorities, civil society actors, on how they can address some of these human rights violations. As a civil society organization also, we have been involved in campaign and advocacy on issues relating to human rights, especially issues of arbitrary arrest and detention, the general respect of human rights. And then we have also been involved, we have also identified some human rights issues, and we've tabled through recommendations to the authorities that they can see into it that these rights are respected or that these issues are addressed. And as a human rights organization also, we have been working in line with the protection of the rights of prisoners. We have provided pro bono legal services to so many people who are arbitrarily arrested and detained, and this has.
As a human rights defender, what are some of your experiences and lessons that you'd like to share with our viewers, or let's say the public for sure?
That as a human rights defender, you have to be strong. You have to be strong. You have to prepare your mind when venturing into human rights work, because it is traumatic. And when you continuously do human rights monitoring daily, it psychologically disturbs you. It can lead to at the forefront of promoting and protecting human rights of individuals, of our brothers and sisters, by all possible means. And that we owe that responsibility to all West continue to educate our children who are fighting either as military, as Cameroon military, or separatist fighters, that no matter what happened, that when fighting they should avoid violating civilians' rights or abusing the rights of civilians or attacking civilian property or civilian objects, because these things, the violations and abuses of civilian rights during armed conflict, goes against the international human rights and humanitarian law.
The Beko massacre came in the middle of what had generally been considered as a relative lull in hostilities. In fact, many had been talking about an apparent return to normalcy. As actors on the ground, what do you think may have triggered this new surge in violence? Was it foreseeable?
So the relative calm here depends on your location. It depends on where you are reporting from. As a human rights activist or defender, I would say that the relative calm here is there's relative calm considering where you are from. And as to whether this violence, rise in violence, was foreseeable, I'll tell you that it was foreseeable. We knew that the fact that the situation is calm doesn't mean that there are no possibilities of violence. And what I can say as an activist is that there's need for a sincere and genuine dialogue between the Cameroon government and the separatist activists or armed separatists. This is because if we continue to fight, I see no end. We must sit at the table to discuss these issues, because this is something that concerns the people's ideology. This is something that concerns political ideology, and not just the weapons that we are using. So, for me, as a human rights defender, there is relative calm in some areas, and the increase in human rights violations and abuses, and increase in violence in some communities, especially the interlands communities.
For bloody incidents like Ekbeko, Fiango, Batibo, Ngabo, we have seen the military and non-state armed groups throwing blame on each other. Can groups like yours walking on the ground be trusted for a true picture of who is doing what?
This is the beginning of the ongoing armed conflict in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. The Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Africa has been doing a lot. We have been monitoring, documenting, and reporting some serious human rights violations, incidents of human rights violations and abuses, as well as we have been producing and publishing reports on the human rights situation in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. And I can tell you that before we issue a statement out, we must have investigated and fact-checked these incidents before we issue our report. And I can tell you also that Human Rights Watch, credible organizations like Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, the State Department, and diplomatic missions in Cameroon, they have continued to cite our reports. And this shows how credible we are. And I can remember that when the Ngabo incident happened, we were the first organization to issue a statement because we spoke with our focal point over there, and our focal point narrated what happened. And this shows to you that when we apportion blame, the international and national community can trust us as to who committed that heinous or any barbaric human rights incident. The separatists and the Cameroon government, they always run away from responsibility when it concerns human rights violations. But I think that organizations like the Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Africa, we are doing a lot of work, and calling these warring parties to order to respect human rights. When we call them, we are impartial. We report what actually happened. We do not fabricate our report. We report based on the facts collected from the field through our interviews with eyewitnesses, interviews with community leaders, interviews with survivors of these incidents.
Bernier Kajetan, human rights defender based in Boya. Thank you so much for being part of Talking Point today. And equally big thanks to all our televiewers that will put an end to today's edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinoxe TV. See you tomorrow at 6 p.m. same time, God willing.